we have got an exclusive story that we've got to break ourselves here tonight before we get to Chris Collins and the other stuff that happened today. And our exclusive tonight concerns another Republican in Congress who would definitely make the finals in our hypothetical pageant to choose the member of Congress who is the president's favorite. Before Donald Trump was elected, California Republican Congressman Devin Nunes was important, but he was a low-profile member of Congress. Low profile to the extent that nobody really recognized him on sight. Definitely nobody knew how to pronounce his last name. But even though Congressman Nunes was a relatively anonymous member of Congress, he still did have a very important job. He's the head of the Intelligence Committee, which is a very big deal. Well, since Trump was elected, Devin Nunes, Trump supporter, a senior member of the Trump transition, he has turned that important job of leading the Intelligence Committee into a full-time crusade to try to derail the Russia investigation by any means necessary and to defend Trump in that investigation at almost any cost. Congressman Nunes has pressured the Justice Department and the FBI into making unprecedented disclosures of law enforcement sensitive material and classified information that's actively being used in ongoing open investigations. Congressman Nunes got himself investigated by the Ethics Committee for himself engineering an elaborate stunt involving classified information that he received from Trump allies in the White House. And then he called a press conference to announce that he was going back up to the Trump White House to deliver to them this shocking classified information that, in fact, they had just given him. The man has been acrobatic to the point of contortion in his efforts to make the Russia investigation go away and to turn the investigation of that attack into itself a bigger scandal than the attack in the first place. And the president has been very appreciative of Congressman Nunes' efforts in this area. A great American hero, a true American patriot. Devin Nunes deserves everyone's support. Vote for Devin Nunes. Well, tonight we have some news about Devin Nunes. One of the Republican members of Congress who had an unexpectedly tough time in a primary last night is a senior member of the Republican House leadership from Washington State, Congresswoman Cathy McMorris Rodgers. Tonight, we have obtained an audio tape that was made at one of her final fundraisers before last night's difficult primary. Now, we obtained this audio from a progressive group called Fuse Washington. Someone from that group paid to attend this Cathy McMorris Rodgers fundraiser and made this recording at the event. This fundraiser was held last week. It was held on Monday of last week. It was a closed press event. Because of that, what happened at this fundraiser has not been reported anywhere, simply because reporters were explicitly not allowed in when this thing happened last week. But tonight, we have obtained the tape of what happened at that fundraiser. And on that tape, you will hear Congresswoman Cathy McMorris Rodgers a little bit. You will mostly hear the Republican chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Congressman Devin Nunes, who was her guest at that fundraiser trying to raise funds for her re-election battle. At this event, Congressman Nunes somewhat radically veers from the script, where he's supposed to be, raising money for Cathy McMorris Rodgers and encouraging Cathy McMorris Rodgers' supporters to be enthusiastic about her candidacy. He veers from that script, as you will hear, and he instead makes lengthy and controversial remarks about the Trump White House and specifically about the Russia investigation. Now, these are not the kinds of things that Devin Nunes usually says in public. Again, this was an event that was closed press. It was held behind closed doors for these Republican donors only. So these remarks from Devin Nunes were never supposed to be made public. As far as he and Cathy McMorris Rodgers knew, presumably they thought they never would become public. But we have now obtained them. We believe these remarks are newsworthy. We believe they are, in fact, revelatory in several instances. And so I'm going to make those remarks public right now. So here goes. We're going to sort of go smaller to medium-sized to big here. First thing to know about the way Congressman Devin Nunes talks behind closed doors when he thinks there will be no press coverage of what he says is that for all of his very public, very fulsome expressions of fealty and support for President Trump, turns out when he's speaking behind closed doors, he's willing to say that he's actually a little embarrassed by President Trump, that the president's statements sometimes make him cringe. So this is the first clip from Devin Nunes. This is in the context of Congressman Nunes criticizing the Russia investigation, and specifically talking about the recent news that the president's statements on Twitter might be cited as evidence in that investigation. Listen.
They know it's ridiculous to go after the president for obstruction of justice. But if they tell a lie often enough, and they put it out there, and they say, oh, we're looking at the tweets, because, you got a mixed bag on the tweets, right? Like sometimes we love the president's tweets, sometimes we cringe on the president's tweets. But they're trying to make a political, this is all political, is why that story ran in the New York Times on tweets.
Congressman Devin Nunes, sometimes we cringe on the president's tweets. Substantively, who could possibly take issue with that, right? In real political terms, though, the president probably will take issue with that, given especially the way the president has used Twitter specifically to hype up support for Congressman Devin Nunes. Nunes, we now know, tells campaign donors behind closed doors at private events that the president's tweets make him cringe. More substantively, though, the White House will also want to know that while Congressman Nunes has been the single lead antagonist of the Russia investigation in Congress, while Congressman Nunes has done more than any other congressional Republican to try to monkey wrench the Robert Mueller investigation and the FBI and the Justice Department more broadly in order to protect President Trump and his campaign, turns out even Congressman Nunes, behind closed doors, is willing to concede that if anyone in the United States had anything to do with the release of emails and documents that were stolen during a campaign, that unequivocally would be a criminal act.
Now, if somebody thinks that my campaign or Kathy's campaign is colluding with the Chinese, or you name the country, it could happen. It would be a very bad thing if Kathy was getting secrets from the Portuguese, let's say, just because I'm Portuguese, my background. So Kathy was getting secret information from the Portuguese. May or may not be illegal. But ultimately, if let's say the Portuguese came and brought her some stolen email, and she decided to release those, okay, now we have a crime, right? If somebody stole the email, gave it to Kathy released it. Well, if that's the case, then that's criminal.
That's criminal. Now, just in case it's not clear here, the reference to the Portuguese here, you hear a little chuckle there? It's not because Congressman Nunes is saying that Portugal did anything wrong, right? The congressman himself is of Portuguese descent. He's explaining here that he's using Portugal as a hypothetical example of a country interfering in our elections. That's why you got the Portugal and Portuguese references here. But just can we just play the re-rack and just play the last part of that again?
Ultimately, if let's say the Portuguese came and brought her some stolen email, and she decided to release those, okay, now we have a crime, right? If somebody stole the email, gave it to Kathy released it. Well, if that's the case, then that's criminal.
If that's the case, then that's criminal. Again, substantively, it is hard to argue with the idea that it is bluntly criminal for anybody to have been involved in the dissemination of stolen emails as part of a political campaign. Substantively, we agree, right? But with federal prosecutors now claiming in a federal indictment that WikiLeaks and DC Leaks and Guccifer 2.0 were the means by which stolen emails were actually disseminated during the presidential election, and with lots of still accruing evidence that people associated with the Trump campaign and the president's family and the president himself helped in that dissemination during the campaign, it cannot help that the lead opponent of the Russia investigation privately concedes when he thinks nobody's recording him that that sort of activity, if proven, that would definitely be criminal. Now we have a problem, right? Because if somebody stole the emails, gave them to Kathy, Kathy released them, well, if that's the case, then that's criminal. How does that line up with the Trump campaign and what they did with WikiLeaks and Guccifer 2.0 and DC Leaks? All right, there's two other statements from Devin Nunes at this closed-door event that are going to make a little bit of news here. This next one includes a little audio cameo from the member of Congress whose fundraiser Devin Nunes was speaking at. Again, Cathy McMorris Rodgers is the number 4 Republican in House leadership. She's from Washington State. This fundraiser from which we obtained this audio is from Spokane, Washington. And the fundraiser was held on behalf of Cathy McMorris Rodgers' re-election campaign. This fundraiser, as I said, was last Monday. The primary for which she was getting Devin Nunes' help to raise money is actually a primary that was held last night. You should know for context that primary went very badly for Cathy McMorris Rodgers. Look how close it was. This is a jungle primary, so the top 2 finishers will go to a runoff in the general election in November. But when you are a longtime incumbent in a Republican district and you're in the number 4 leadership position in all of Congress, you're not supposed to only squeak into your own primary runoff with less than a single percentage point lead over your Democratic challenger. Given those results last night, Republican Cathy McMorris Rodgers now looks like she is in real danger of losing her seat this fall. Well, now, when her constituents decide whether or not they're going to return her to Washington, they will also have this to chew on, in addition to everything else they already know about their longtime member of Congress. Here, for the first time ever, is Congressman Devin Nunes. The tape that you'll hear here is Congressman Nunes responding to a question from the audience at this fundraiser. The question is about the Justice Department official who oversees the Robert Mueller investigation, Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein. You might recall right before they left for their summer recess a couple of weeks ago, a few hardline/fringe pro-Trump Republican members of Congress actually introduced impeachment proceedings against Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein. That was greeted with sort of slack-jawed stares by most of mainstream most of the mainstream Beltway press and most mainstream political figures. The Republican leadership in the House, led by House Speaker Paul Ryan, quickly made clear, once those articles of impeachment were introduced, that really the impeachment of Rod Rosenstein was a fringe interest. It was not actually a Republican congressional priority. Yeah, there might be these few fringe members who are pursuing it, but that's not something that's going anywhere. Paul Ryan basically immediately made clear after those articles of impeachment were introduced that the Republican leadership was not on board with that kind of a crazy stunt. Well, now we know that at a closed-door private fundraiser last week, Congresswoman Cathy McMorris Rodgers, who's part of the leadership, she's a member of the top leadership of the House, you will hear Cathy McMorris Rodgers here chiming in and appearing to agree with Devin Nunes, as Nunes explains to a closed-door group of Republican donors that actually there is a live House Republican plan to impeach Rod Rosenstein. They just don't want it to seem like they're pursuing it now. They're waiting for 2 important things to happen first, and then their plan is to go ahead. So here's that tape. You will mostly hear Congressman Devin Nunes here, but there are 2 other voices in this tape as well. You'll hear at the top an audience member asking the question. That starts this whole discussion. And then at one point in the middle of Devin Nunes' response, you will hear a woman's voice interjecting. That is the chair of the House Republican Conference, the number 4 Republican in House leadership, newly embattled Republican Congresswoman Cathy McMorris Rodgers.
But also, on the things that came up in the House on the Rosenstein impeachment thing, and it appears from an outsider that the Republicans were not.
Yeah, well, it's a bit complicated, right? And I say that because you have to. So we only have so many months left, right? So if we actually vote to impeach, okay, what that does, that triggers the Senate then has to take it up. Well, then you have to decide what you want right now because the Senate only has so much time. Do you want them to drop everything and not confirm the Supreme Court justice, the new Supreme Court justice? So that's part of why I don't think you're not getting from, like I've said publicly, Rosenstein deserves to be impeached. I mean, so I don't think you're going to get any argument from most of our colleagues. The question is the timing of it right before the election.
That's what the Senate, so the Senate has to start.
The Senate would have to drop everything they're doing and start with impeachment on Rosenstein. And then you take the risk of not getting Kavanaugh confirmed. So it's not a matter of that any of us like Rosenstein. It's a matter of timing.
It's a matter of timing. This again is audio that was recorded at a closed-door, closed-press private fundraiser for Cathy McMorris Rodgers last week. McMorris Rodgers facing an unexpectedly difficult fight to try to hold onto her seat in Congress. She only won this primary last night for her seat by less than 1% of the vote. But can we put, do we have just the transcript though? We can put up by that clip for a second though. Right. There have been these public statements by the Republican leadership in Congress that they're not pursuing this crazy idea of impeaching Rod Rosenstein. But despite those public statements, here's Cathy McMorris Rodgers appearing to agree that, in fact, they are going to pursue impeaching Rod Rosenstein once the election is over and once they've got the new Supreme Court justice installed. Now, impeaching Rod Rosenstein, of course, that has nothing to do with Rod Rosenstein. What it is the only option, the one option that the Republican Congress has to really force the end of the Mueller investigation. If they impeach and forcibly remove from office the man who oversees the Mueller investigation, that is how then they could arrange the installation of somebody else who could be put in place in that same job who would shut the investigation down. It's really the only thing congressional Republicans could do to stop the Mueller investigation. It's their, emergency brake. It's an extreme, even a crazy option. And it has been seen that way. It's been seen as extreme, if not crazy, thus far in Washington, at least in public statements by House Republican leadership in Washington. But here's evidence from this audio that the House leadership is secretly on board with this plan, but for after the election. And they want to specifically sequence it so it happens once President Trump's nominee is safely installed on the Supreme Court. And that may be just about wanting the Supreme Court nomination fight to take precedence over everything else. It may also mean that they're expecting the impeachment of Rod Rosenstein to precipitate some kind of constitutional crisis, for which they want to make sure they've got the new Trump justice already ensconced on the high court. All right, here's one last one. Congressman Devin Nunes leads the Intelligence Committee. As I said, that's a really big deal. It's a big responsibility. Cathy McMorris Rodgers helps lead the whole Republican caucus in Congress. At this closed-door private fundraiser for Congresswoman McMorris Rodgers last week, Devin Nunes spelled out in quite blunt terms how he views his role in Congress when it comes to the Russia investigation, and how he sees the responsibility of all Republicans in Congress when it comes to the Russia investigation. Specifically, why he sees it as so important for them to keep their majority so they keep control of Congress in the elections this fall. As I said, this is just the last clip here, one more piece of tape from this fundraiser. Here we go.
So therein lies, so it's like your classic catch-22 situation where, we're at this is what puts us in such a tough spot. If Sessions won't unrecuse and Mueller won't clear the president, we're the only ones, which is really the danger. That's why and thank you for saying it, by the way. We have to keep all these seats. We have to keep the majority. If we do not keep the majority, all of this goes away.
We're the only ones. That's the danger. Can we just put up the transcript of that again? Thank you. If Sessions won't unrecuse and Mueller won't clear the president, we're the only ones. If we do not keep the majority, all of this goes away. So behind closed doors, when they don't think there's any recording of what they're saying, they've been told there's no press, they've disallowed the press from being there. It's a private, Republicans only closed fundraiser. The case they're making is that they either need to stop the investigation of the president, they need to stop the Russia investigation, or they need to keep using the power of Congress to impede that investigation. Or else, right? Or, quote, all of this goes away. That's why they want to keep the majority. That's the stakes for them keeping the majority. They're using the majority to impede the investigation. If they lose the majority, the investigation might go forward. And then, quote, all of this goes away. So Again, we obtained this audio from a progressive group called Fuse Washington. Someone from that group paid to attend this fundraiser and made this recording. We, of course, asked Congressman Devin Nunes for comment. He has thus far not responded. We hope that he will. We also asked Congresswoman Cathy McMorris Rodgers for comment. This was her fundraiser, after all. Her office has not yet commented either, although we hope that they will. We will let you know if we hear back. I'll also tell you we're going to post all of this audio and these transcripts online tonight. Stay with us tonight. More to come.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.